Hello everyone, welcome back to this lecture series on spatial statistics and spatial econometrics. Today we are going to start with a new chapter on working with ArcGIS. So here we make a transition from lectures to hands-on exercises for spatial statistics and spatial econometrics. And the first module in this process is working with ArcGIS. After this module on ArcGIS, we will have a module on working with R. So combined, these two modules will ramp you up in order to sort of, apply all the tools that you've studied in the lecture series, including the variograms, the exploratory analysis, the regressions, and so on and so forth on these two software. Now remember, for certain functions, one software may be better than the other. So knowledge of both these softwares in combination is sort of important if you are working professionally with spatial data. Okay, so in this series of working with ArcGIS, I will first talk about the software itself, how to download it, and then we will start working with a real world data set. Okay, so let's start with with the software itself, and let's look at the process or the steps to download the software. Okay, so I am simply working with a Google search portal, and I'm going to say download ArcGIS. Okay, so it gives me this first option, pro.arcgis.com, download ArcGIS Pro. The second option in the series is download ArcGIS for Office, and it is coming from www.esri.com. Okay, so ultimately ESRI is the main host or provider of the ArcGIS software, all the modules, and so on and so forth. So let's work with the first link that we have stumbled upon. Okay. Okay, so here we are. So here are the steps that you get for downloading ArcGIS on your system, and we will be looking at this this module of downloading ArcGIS Pro from my ESRI. So I'm just going to click on go to my ESRI. You can also look at the steps to do that. So here are the steps provided on the same page. There you go. So you can follow the steps from here, but the main sort of host, as I said, is this web domain called my ESRI. Okay, so here under products we have ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS Pro, Enterprise, and Platform. We are interested in ArcGIS Pro. Okay, so we are going to just click on that, and it gives me it says ArcGIS Pro, do you want to go to pricing or sign up for a free trial? Okay, and then there's a bunch of information, how does it work, what are the different utilities, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I'm going to talk about both the priced version as well as the trial. For students who are, for the purpose of this course, the trial version will be sufficient for you. Okay, however, I should make it very clear right away that the trial version is not to be used for any commercial purposes, any professional purposes, not even for instruction, right? So I can, for the trial version, you guys can just go in, you can say sign up for a free trial, and it just says professional students. Okay, so you want the students version, so here you say sign up for trial. Okay, so here we are. So it has a lot of options here. It has a student gallery, it has software access. So we'll go to software access, but let's wait a minute before we go to the software access and just scroll down a little bit. Scrolling down, it gives us a very important resource called online lessons, and these are really important lessons. Okay, some of them are really interesting, they will be very interesting, but a very good thing is that even though we are studying formally introducing you with the functionality of ArcGIS, what I want to point out is this incredible resource that ESRI provides for the new beginners, the professional workers, for researchers and so on and so forth. So for example, choose the right projection. So now, we have looked at our lectures and we know what geographic, projection systems are. Why are they so important? For example, remember the World Geodetic System, WGS 1984. And the whole idea of projecting the sphere of the earth on a two-dimensional plane, that is a piece of paper holding a lamp and getting an orthogonal projection. How does that translate into the latitudes and longitudes based coordinate system, and so on and so forth, right? So now you can actually study the same thing in detail here, by clicking in our lecture just on choosing the right projection. So I recommend that you go through this particular session. But apart from that, you have these very interesting sessions: classifying land cover, exploring future, climate projections. Then if you go down, there is design symbology on a thematic map, something we will also study in this module. There are things like, investigate pollution patterns. If you're from Delhi or from India in general, you'll be very interested in investigating pollution patterns for India. Right, and the data are out there, right? I mean, there is Central Pollution Control Board, the Delhi Pollution Control Committee. So all these agencies provide us with data, incredible amounts of data, which can be mapped, right? I mean, they are all mappable data and they can be analyzed using the tools that we have studied in this course. So, all these nice modules can be used and can be exploited for your own benefit. All it requires is investing some time, and it'll really ramp you up in terms of using ArcGIS in a professional manner. Okay. All right. So coming back to accessing the software. So, on this student page, I can just click on access software. And then, on the right hand side, you can see it says sign up for education trial. So all you need to do is provide your information, your email ID, the one that you want to register, and what you are going to get is a 21-day trial, right? I'm again saying, the amount of material for ArcGIS in this course is going to be approximately 1 week, and probably even little less than that. So, a 3-week trial is more than sufficient for you to really get ramped up. Okay, so it's pretty simple. You will basically sign up for it, you will get an email, you will activate your license, and then it provides you all the steps to download and basically have the software for your use. What I will be using, on the other hand, is the paid version for this particular class, right? So I'm going to, for that, just click on go to pricing. Okay, here we are. So under go to pricing, it gives me, okay, here is the core GIS software, and it says, do you want ArcGIS for the desktop? Do you want it for different user types, for credits, for personal use, and so on and so forth? I'm just going to go for ArcGIS software desktop. Okay, so I'm going to say pricing. Okay, here, I need it for individuals. So here is ArcGIS for personal use, and this is the one that we want, right? So either for personal use or for student use, the 1-year software is 8,500, including taxes, it comes around 10,000 rupees per year, which is a bit pricey, but not all that pricey either, right? I mean, given the fact that there is all this resource that is available to us in terms of the learning sessions, to the functionality of software, we will see is very, very advanced. The software can do a lot of things. It is integrated with Python. So those of you who are who have an extensive background in programming, this software will provide you with incredible resources. Okay, so the idea is that we will simply whichever route you want to take, I would say that you should definitely make use of the trial version for yourself. There is also a open source version of ArcGIS out there, which is called QGIS. Now I am not teaching QGIS here, but the functionalities may be similar, if not the same. the documentation, etc., may not be as systematic as for ArcGIS. But I know that as a researcher, I'm aware that many of my colleagues indeed use QGIS. So you're free to also explore that. I believe that learning the functionality on ArcGIS will also help you get the functionality of this one. One other point is that there are also older versions of ArcGIS. So if you happen to have one, right, and maybe earlier it was also cheaper and so on and so forth. If you happen to have an older version of ArcGIS, you are perfectly fine. The functionality is same, the buttons, etc., might be different. What is very good is that you can actually simply conduct Google search for different functions and say, I have ArcGIS version 10 point, let's say 10.4, and say you want to say visualize symbology ArcGIS 10.4. It'll provide you all the steps for 10.4 with all the visuals, not just the steps. So there is incredible amount of resource, hundreds of YouTube videos explaining various functions of ArcGIS for different versions, right? So if you are a new beginner, all I want to motivate here is that there's nothing to you will be able to pick up ArcGIS pretty easily. All it requires is a little bit time and patience and investment in terms of focused learning of ArcGIS from different sources. So you can take this class as the starting point, but then the more you explore, the more you're going to learn, right? So there's no there's really a lot that one can achieve from these software. Okay, so with that, I'm going to so one can just one can download the software, download the license, purchase a license, but ultimately, what you're going to have is a downloaded version of ArcGIS that looks like the one on your screen. So under the start button, I have ArcGIS and I have ArcGIS Pro. I also have ArcGIS Pro Online Help, which is very good. They're very responsive. It has a lot of resource. Again, there's a reason it's paid, right? It has something called IPython Jupyter Notebook, which basically means that the software is fully integrable with Python scripts. There is Python command prompt and Python interactive terminal. So if you are a programmer who is well aware of Python, ArcGIS can fully integrate that language. Okay, so I'm going to start with starting with ArcGIS Pro. So okay, so let's let the software begin. So if you are, this is the first time, let's say, this is not the first time on my system, but if it is the first time that you're starting ArcGIS, it takes a while to set itself up. So if it's a couple of minutes, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, and you're like, this thing is always, it's not starting, so be patient, it's starting, it takes a while to set itself up, right? So the first bit is a bit slow to completely ramp up. Once you have it on your system, you close it, you start it again, it'll be faster. Okay, all right. So here we go. We have home, we have learning resources. Again, a lot of resources, right? Throughout this journey of just looking at the software, we've seen that there is learning resources after resources after resources, which is fantastic, right? Okay. Now in new project, I have to start a new project and I have 4 components of a new project. The first is called a map. The second is called a catalog. The third is called a global scene. The fourth is called a local scene. And the fifth is start without a template. Okay. So here for our purposes, right, you're free to explore all of those. But for our purposes, map and catalog are the most useful extensions. So I'm going to click on map. As soon as I click on it, it gives me a screen which says create a new project. It asks me for a name and it asks me for a location. So whatever I do on this software is called a project, right? And just like any other software, when you're working on that software and you come back to it later, you have to you want to start where you left. So this is right at the outset, it sort of encourages you to create a new project and save it. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to say open. I'm going to go to desktop and I'm going to go to this software called Gaurav ArcGIS, which is just my name with ArcGIS. And here, I have these two folders already there with me called data sets and practice sessions. I'm simply going to just start name a folder here at this location. I'm going to call it Spatial Statistics and Spatial Econometrics ArcGIS project. Okay, and I'm going to say okay. All right, so it says cannot access. All right, so I'm going to say okay. All right, so let's see if I can do something different and say okay, open. Okay. All right. So I have to use an existing folder. I cannot create a folder there. So I'm simply using the folder practice sessions, which is fantastic, right? I mean, it's one folder for us, right? So I'm going to name the project as Spatial Statistics and Spatial Econometrics ArcGIS project. Okay. So create a new folder for this project. I'm going to say, okay, you can create a new folder and say, okay. So now it's setting itself up. Okay. All right. So it's going to take 1 or 2 minutes. Okay. All right. It has now opened. So we have a panel. We have on the left, we have a contents pane. Right, a contents pane means it's a pane, a window which has all the contents that are listed on the middle screen, which is called the map. The map sort of stores or sort of arranges the data in layers. Okay, so if you've worked with some other layer-based software, you would be aware that when you're working with image data, you're often using this idea of one layer over the other, one layer over the other, so you can visualize things, compare, contrast, copy, manipulate, and so on and so forth. Okay. Okay. So I have this third pane which I'm going to just cancel. I'm just going to say I don't need it for now. So I have two panes to begin with. I have map and I have contents. Now so I have project, which is the project which I'm working with on the top tab. Then we have the map. Now map has many things. It says go to XY, bookmarks, explore. So right now it's at explore, so I can explore. Right, I can just hold my cursor and I can visit different parts of the world. But what are these different parts of the world? Why am I able to visit these parts of the world simply on my screen on the map window? Well, you have this under contents, you have these buttons, and on the first button is list by drawing order. So we'll always have this button clicked, right? We'll always have this activated for our purposes. Under that, we have the map, the project that we have started, the map, right? The one that we have started, and it has two layers. The first layer is called World Topographic Map India. The second is called World Hillshade. And if you notice there are these check marks in front of both these layers. So that means, the first intrigue that one would have is, let me uncheck and see what happens. So let me do that. Let me just uncheck World Topographic Map India. All right, so those names and those, so what's gone? So, the boundaries are gone. Okay, the country boundaries are gone. The cities, the locations of cities are gone. The regional sort of names are gone, and so on and so forth. Right. So this layer called World Topographic Map is an inbuilt layer that comes with ArcGIS Pro, right? And it gives me a starting point in terms of where am I on the map. Okay. What is the second layer? The second layer is called World Hillshade. Okay, if I remove it, I have a completely blank screen. So it is possible on your system, you actually begin with a completely blank screen, and that is fantastic, no problem. Okay, so these inbuilt base maps are only there to help you. they don't really have a substantive value so far as conducting analysis and so on and so forth. Okay, so okay, because we have these base maps, we are going to use them just for our purposes. So let's look at world hillshade. So, but by looking at it, I can tell that the world hillshade is somehow a elevation, digital elevation map. Okay, it is drawn in grayscale. The darker the scale, the higher the elevation, it seems to me. Okay, and how do I know that? I have this region in India. This is the Indo-Gangetic Plains, and here are the Himalayas, right? So the plains are all white, and as we move from the plains upward into the mountain range, the Himalayan range, we have these darker colors providing us a understanding of a wonderful visualization of elevation, right? So you know, we can keep zooming in, and you can see how wonderful, you know, wonderfully these things are drawn, right? Remember when we studied things like you know, the ridges and the plains, spatial heterogeneity, spatial dependence. The first introductory class, I had some, you know, very modest images to sort of borrowed from elsewhere to explain those concepts. We could again go back and look at spatial heterogeneity, spatial dependence using these images, right? I mean, if I look at this, you know, I really don't see much of a heterogeneous structure, but highly dependent structure, in the sense that, you know, all the ridges are of similar colors and the valleys are of similar colors, right? So the space, there is high spatial dependence, but maybe not so much spatial heterogeneity. But if I just change this a little bit, change my location a little bit, here now I also have spatial heterogeneity. If I move from south, west to northeast, I have a clear change in means, and also I have spatial dependence, right? So different scales, different locations, we have different characters to our data. Okay, so to this, if I add the second layer, I can see the rivers now, you know, I can see the rivers, I can see the boundaries, I can look at the names of the locations and so on and so forth, right? So a really nice spatial visualization tool to begin with. So let me just do one thing. Let me go to World Hillshade and let me just say right click there. When I right click, I get these different options, and on these options I'm going to say properties. I'm going to click on properties. You should click on all of them and explore. Okay, I'm going to click on properties. Under properties, let's click on source. Under source, the data type is ArcGIS map service. So here is the data type, is that it is a data set that belongs to ArcGIS. Because I downloaded the software, a paid software version, they're just providing this base map to me for a good starting point, let's say, for my analysis, right? The units are meters. It's called elevation. It's an elevation service of ArcGIS. And if I click on spatial reference, you have this projected coordinate system. Now, this is something we have formally introduced in our lectures, geographic coordinate system, right? So here the geographic coordinate system of this map is WGS, the World Geodetic System, 1984, something that we again looked at, a standard system of visualizing data, right? Now, if we are putting one layer over the other and we have different projection systems, then that should worry you. Okay, so the first thing to check when we are combining the two data sets, learning from two different layers, right, that we will do throughout this course, and if they are not coming from the same coordinate system, then the first step is to actually convert them to the same coordinate system, right? And to do that, we will talk about it in a minute, right? Okay. Again, so you know, it has many different, okay, so datum, here is again the projection system, the angular unit is degree, right? And so you know, degree is degrees, you know, we saw degrees, so from the origin of the earth, you know, how many degrees east, how many degrees west. So the measurement that you get from these data are going to be in degrees, right? And there are some other information about, about this layer, okay? So that's that. And similarly for world topographic map, we can go to properties and here we go. So now here the data type is vector tile service. So this second data set is a vector data set, right? And it is the server. It tells me where can you get it from. You know, again the vertical units are meter. The projected coordinate system is exactly the same as the previous one, right, which is the world hillshade. So that's why putting them on each other provides us a good reference point that, you know, we are putting apples on apples. So, you know, we can actually, we can actually believe that the boundaries are indeed, these boundaries, these pink color boundaries are indeed sort of, you know, correctly placed so far as the elevation map is placed. So they are both talking about the same locations on Earth, right? Okay. All right. So this is about the setup. One more last thing that I want to just point out is that, you know, there are these, you know, in the view under map, insert, analysis and view, we have two more interesting, tabs that we will be working with. First is called as the catalog pane, right? When we began, I said, okay, so there are two panes which are going to be useful for me. The first one is called as the map, which is right here, and the second is the catalog. So arc map and arc catalog, if you are using the older versions, then these two come as two different, two different windows, right? Here in ArcGIS Pro, which is the latest version, they are just integrated within the same window, right? In the older versions, Arc Catalog opens as a separate window and Arc Map opens as a separate window, but they talk to each other. They're fully integrated with each other. So far as if you make a change on Arc Catalog, it'll show up in for Arc Map as well. Okay, so what happens here? So under Catalog, the interest that we have mostly is in folders. So under folders, I see one folder which is already included, is called SSSE ArcGIS project. Okay, and if I keep my marker on it, it shows me that this folder was modified on the 18th of July, which is today, which is when I'm recording this lecture, and its path tells me that it's on desktop under the folder Gaurav ArcGIS, under practice sessions, and then SSSE ArcGIS project. So phenomenal. It is already, you know, providing me a location for where the project is going to be saved. So let me just click on the arrow here to see what happens. Okay. So this has SSSE ArcGIS project.gdb. Now this geodatabase, GDB is geodatabase. If you say want to take the full project from one machine to the other, you take the GDB file and run it there. Okay, the GDB file will take all the information that you have been, so let's say you have multiple, like 5 layers that you have worked out, it will contain all 5 layers. Okay, so it's a compressed geodatabase. Okay, now the project has other files, right? The project has many other files which contain different informations. Now the next part is, the last part in this module of this introduction or ramping up onto ArcGIS is adding a folder. So I'm going to say insert, map, project, map, insert, and I'm going to say add folder. So I'm going to say add folder. Let's go to desktop, go to ArcGIS. Now Gaurav ArcGIS is the parent folder that I'm very interested in for this particular project. So I'm going to say Gaurav ArcGIS, and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to say go to desktop, Gaurav ArcGIS, and I'm going to say add this folder. Okay, so I'm not double clicking on the folder, just selecting the folder and I'm saying okay. All right, as soon as I do that, you see under folders, it has now added, Gaurav ArcGIS. So if you have data sets scattered around, you can just add folders and access them directly from these data. So now I can see everything here. Okay, so under practice sessions, I already have another folder called India admin data. Under data sets, I have many different data sets. So I have all this pre-cooked stuff that I brought from somewhere, and now I can visualize that directly on the catalog pane. Okay, Not just this, I can actually move files, okay? Move files between folders right from here, right? Let me show you something. So if I go to India ADM, I can say India RDS, I can say right click, copy. I can come to SSSE project and I can say paste, and it adds this folder here. Now let me go to Windows Explorer and show you what really happened there. So I go to my Windows Explorer. Okay, so here is my desktop, here is Gaurav ArcGIS. Now I go to data sets. Now I go to practice sessions and I go to SSSE. Look what happened. It actually added this entire folder, copied this folder on my Windows Explorer from its original location that's here. Not only that, all the contents of this folder will also be, brought out. Okay, so it's a very useful, tool where I can basically, it's like an ArcGIS Windows Explorer integrated into ArcGIS. Okay, and it becomes very, very useful when we are actually working with imagery data. That we will start to do in the next session of ArcGIS. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope you are here. Before we end, we are going to do one very important thing. Always, we are going to keep saving our, our projects. I'm going to say save, and it will start. If I close it and I start it, it will start exactly at this point. Okay. So that's about it for this particular session, and let me just, we will now start working with vector data and with polygons data, as a first sort of step into working with ArcGIS. Thank you for your attention.